Greetings and salutations, Internet distance. It is I, Wolfphototech, and here we are with something that's not Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Call of Cthulhu 7th Edition Keeper's Rulebook. This is the essential book, one of the most essential books for Call of Cthulhu 7th Edition. Incidentally, before I get going, this book doubles also as a player's handbook in a pinch. You know, if you really need to not have the... If you don't have the money and you want to be a keeper and a player, you can still use this book as a player to make your characters for Call of Cthulhu 7th Edition. You just end up with a more limited selection of occupations, and you have a reduced range of options in character creation for rolling for stats and stuff like that. However, this book still covers the basic system for that, as well as it has advice on game mastering or being a keeper for Call of Cthulhu, as well as history of the 1920s and even some modern history and stuff. This book is a fairly chunky book, but it's not ridiculously heavy. I got a sticker on the back, and I cannot see if there's an MSRP under the sticker. And screw it. This book, by the way, Call of Cthulhu 7th Edition, won a Origins Award, Hall of Fame. Call of Cthulhu is one of the most popular TTRPGs in the world. In fact, in Asia and even South America and even parts of Europe, it is more popular than Dungeons and Dragons by a large margin in some places. In Japan, it basically carpet nukes Dungeons and Dragons straight into the ground. Like, Dungeons and Dragons basically doesn't have followers compared to Call of Cthulhu. And same thing with Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Hardly anyone plays Pathfinder 2nd Edition compared to Call of Cthulhu in Japan. Japan pretty much plays Call of Cthulhu and homespun games, or TTRPGs, such as the two I have up here. I've done videos of them in the past. In fact, one of them is like literally has over 1,000 views on my channel. So there you go. But anyways, here we go. Please note that there is this grim image of H.P. Lovecraft. It's important to note that he's had numerous issues, and many people who don't entirely understand the person and his history, but only heard basic concepts around him, and have quickly come to judge him without understanding that it's not racism or sexism or anything like that. It's specifically xenophobia. He grew up in a household with a somewhat wealthy household in the 1900s, 1910s, and his mother was mentally ill, and there was a lot of mental illness in the family, and he picked up on that mental illness. And it's not just mental illness of racism and stuff like that. I mean like actual mental illness like paranoia and stuff like that. And he created Call of Cthulhu and the not Call of Cthulhu the RPG, but he created the Lovecraftian genre because of the new age technology and concerns of said things. And he was quite familiar with the concept of fear and suffering. So he wrote on that stuff. And yeah, he had xenophobia. Throughout his life, he became more and more comfortable with interacting with people outside of his home and people who were different from himself. He eventually became friends with a black man, and I believe he also married a Jewish woman eventually. So he went from being being terrified and being told to be afraid of anything different from him, to eventually coming out of his shell and becoming more used to people that are different from him and concepts different from him over time. So it's a long, hard journey for him. Right here in the very beginning of the book, there you have the title page with all the people from Chaosium, alumni, and the people who have designed in 7th edition. You have various acknowledgements, dedications, credits. That's to various people who have helped out. Copyrights for various people who wrote the Cthulhu Mythos or the Lovecraftian Mythos. A special forward from Sandy Peterson. By the way, Sandy Peterson has a YouTube channel here on YouTube. Yeah, that's really funny. He has a YouTube channel on YouTube. It's called Sandy of Cthulhu. Yeah. And he also has Peterson Games as well. So go ahead and check those channels out. Yeah, there's a table of contents. This is a medium level table of contents. It has main chapters and then it has subsections in it. It's actually fairly well organized, and it's not terribly hard to find what you want to find when you want to go and page through the book for it. You got Chapter 1, the introduction. Chapter 2, Lovecraft and the Cthulhu Mythos. Chapter 3, creating investigators. Chapter 4, skills. Chapter 5, game system. Chapter 6, combat. Chapter 7, chases. Chapter 8, insanity. Chapter 9, magic. There is magic in Call of Cthulhu, but you don't start with it by default. Keep that in mind, people, okay? Chapter 10, playing the game. Chapter 11, tomes of Eldritch lore. Chapter 12, grimoires. This covers like spells, deeper magic, the grimoire, and concept as a whole. Chapter 13, artifacts and alien devices. Chapter 14, monsters, beasts, and alien gods. Chapter 15, scenarios. Because it actually comes with 2 scenarios for the keeper to run his party through. They're both appropriate for beginning players in general. The keeper's pack also comes with several fairly good adventures for new players as well. You got Chapter 7, which is appendices, which includes the glossary, converting the older editions Call of Cthulhu to 7th edition, equipment from the 1920s, equipment from the modern era, weapons tables, rules summaries, investigator sheets for the 1920s, as well as investigator sheets for the modern era. Please note that the appendices often has the best information organization in the entire book when it comes to weapons and equipment from the 1920s and modern era. All the other stuff in the previous chapters before that and are decent, but it's not as solid. As typical for any chapter, this happens to be some artwork, double page, and I do believe this is... I'm having a brain fart. This is artwork that's depicting... Oh my god. The Dunwich Horror? Yes, the Dunwich Horror. Which, incidentally, there is actually the complete copy of the Dunwich Horror in here for your reading enjoyment to get into the Call of Cthulhu universe. You have for the introduction, you have a welcome section explaining the overview of the game, cooperative, competitive playing, winners and losers, examples of play, which actually expands out to multiple pages in the book, a total of 3. You have explanations on how the system. It's actually 4 pages. You have 4 sections on the various components in the book, explaining the new edition and notices to the keeper. And as I said before, every section basically starts with a single page piece of artwork, and the chapter starts with double page. You have Chapter 2, which is Lovecraft and the Cthulhu Mythos. It explains Howard Phillips Lovecraft as a person, and terminology and various concepts of the Cthulhu Mythos over several pages. And then it goes into creating investigators. And I think the Dunwich Horror is actually in the player's handbook. This chapter goes over creating characters for Call of Cthulhu. This is the standard rule method for Call of Cthulhu, not the quick rule, the standard array or the quick creation rules. Just the standard rolling system. Explanations on the character sheet and everything. So as I said before, this is entirely usable as a player to create a character, it just doesn't have the full range of options. It just has a short list of sample occupations, which is basically 1/20th of the options. There's only 2 pages for sample occupations for Call of Cthulhu in the Keeper's Rulebook. In the Investigator's Handbook, there is probably like 10 pages of occupations, which function as your background as a character. It talks to you about ideologies, beliefs, significant people in your character's life, and so forth. It gets you a good enough overview on how to make a character. It even includes the table for the skill system. So when you need to roll a half or 1/5, you know that. It gives you a sample character on sample character sheet to understand what it would look like when it's already done. As well as you can also use this as a character you can hand out. Chapter 4 is on skills, which covers all the fun stuff like how to roll for skills, pushing rolls, combining skills together to expedite the game along. You got a list of skills right here, and so forth. You have how each skill is used, how to push a skill. Like, the concept of pushing skills in Call of Cthulhu is that, let's just say you're trying to climb, and you ask the player what he's going to try to do, and the player says, I'm going to try to climb out this window, see if I can get a good footing on this ledge, whatever I can grab onto anything. And you tell your player, okay, go ahead and roll for it. If they fail by a large enough margin, like greater than 10 in points difference, you could tell them, okay, your character looked out the window, he or she looked at the ledge, and you thought, I can't quite see a good hold here. Or you put your foot out on the ledge and you couldn't get your foot on the ledge, and you're like, pull your foot back in. You couldn't quite do it. Well, the player says, oh no, I really need to get out of this window here. Okay, how do you do it up? I'm going to try to take my tie and see if I can hook it on something above the window. I like quickly tie it on a bar or a rail above the window to see if I can aid myself to get out, or take my belt off to see if I can like tie it on a statue or a ledge. Okay, you're gonna really try to push for it, just in case you know if you fail this, your character can slip, fall 2 stories, and potentially injure themselves. The player goes and rolls for it. They succeed. They manage to actually take their belt and tie it on a statue and get out of the window and hang outside the window. Or if they fail, they try to tie their belt on something, and when they go out the window, they lose grip on the belt and fall and hit the ground, hurting themselves for like 1d4, 1d3 damage or something like that. And you got a mild limp now as you try to get up and get away. So forth. The skill system is not terribly hard. It's a roll under system. Call of Cthulhu is a roll under system with a D100. You just take a D100, you roll, and at your skill level, if you have like 50 for a skill, if you roll under 50, you succeed. If you roll under a half, you get extreme success, and so forth. Or is that a critical success? And then extreme would be 1/5. But anyways, you get starting percentage. You've got charm here. You add the 15 to it, and you say, like, I want to put a few more points into charm, and so forth. But as I said, it gives you all the essential stuff for not just creating a character, if you really just need to create a character, but also explains how to use opposed rolls, as well as how to push a roll. Examples. And this goes for several pages. They do a very good job of giving you a thorough enough understanding of what each skill does, and if it pertains to 1920s or modern era. Like, obviously 1920s doesn't have computers, so you're not going to have computers in that. Then you have Chapter 5, which is Game Systems, which basically goes over how to do all the other little stuff, like put together, put skills to challenges and so forth as a game master. You also have a nice range of artwork. Throughout the entire book, there is a really nice range of artwork in various styles. A lot of styles are in the style of 1920s sketch art and stuff like that. It explains how to roll penalty die and bonus dice and the whole mechanic around that, with some handy dandy images to make it easier. It explains various concepts that are used in Call of Cthulhu, horror, heists, and mysteries, and other things. You have a chapter section on combat, which is basically covering over the skills of combat, order, initiative, combat rounds as a whole, the concept of fighting maneuvers and dodging, and so forth. Pro tip for players that happen to be watching this, or game masters, or in other words keepers: the most powerful builds in Call of Cthulhu focus around avoidance of combat and acquisition of goods and information in Call of Cthulhu. You got a nice combat flow chart explaining how to go through all the essential steps in combat. It's not terribly complicated. Aiming die bonuses and so forth. So, like, if your character goes prone, do they get a bonus die? Yeah. If they take extra effort to improve their aim, they can get a bonus die on it. If they happen to be multiple characters fighting the same opponent, they get bonus dice on that. Or the enemy gets penalty dice. Or you step it up stages is on the complex on the requirement of rolling. It also covers over simple poisons in Call of Cthulhu. You have chase rules. The chase rules are somewhat complicated in reading, but they're actually, once you get it, is actually super simple. As I said before, there's numerous pieces of artwork throughout the entire book. Overall, this book is actually quite nice. Nice sketch or wood grain in art. Singe art or something. I forgot the term for that. Oh my goodness. All those art credits, and I forgot the term for it. But anyways, beautiful artwork of Cthulhu. Section on insanity and the whole insanity mechanics of Call of Cthulhu. Staging of stepping up of dies is as enemies do psychic damage to your character or various horrors. You got simple tables for phobias and manias, and much, much more here. It explains compulsions, amnesia, manias, and phobias in fairly good detail overall. Some scary artwork of various creatures. You got a chapter on magic, as I said before, and so forth. The magic in Call of Cthulhu is important. It's important to note that magic is not reliable magic like in Dungeons and Dragons. It is unreliable magic like in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. Like, you could screw up and burn your points. As long as you have magic points, you can still cast a spell, but you'll burn health points. So there's no guarantee that you actually can cast a spell. But usually spells are quite powerful when you do achieve them. There's also a concept of deeper magic, where you actually figure out a way to cast a spell in a stronger form. And you do extra effects on top of that. But it's never entirely specified what would be the deeper version. you could create dozens and dozens of deeper versions of a spell that can cause different effects on top of that. Typically in this book, there's usually always a piece of artwork every other page or every page. Seldom will you ever come across a bunch of pages where there's no artwork at all. And so forth. The book, once you get towards the back end, is loaded with numerous tables of various grimoires or tomes of magic or weaponry and so forth. There's also an entire set of rules on learning the Cthulhu Mythos and rules on learning the Cthulhu magic system as well as your characters. Because by default, the system assumes that your characters don't know anything about the mythos and don't know anything about magic, actual true magic in the Cthulhu universe. And so forth. Now, flip through more pages. There also happens to be a handy-dandy bestiary in the back. Please note that not every monster or creature has artwork in the book, but a lot of them do. So there you go. Some creatures, like Nathaliotep, have stats in the book. However, the stats are quite terrifying when you see it. As a general rule for players and even game masters of Call of Cthulhu, the monsters are extremely powerful in relative to players. Even a peak human being in Call of Cthulhu, if you made a character that is absolutely perfect, they can still fail. And they can still fail in such a horrifyingly bad way that they can be instantly killed. So the general rule in Call of Cthulhu is to actually avoid getting locked into a melee combat with most horrors. If you happen to have advantage in numbers, you can tilt it to an easy or effective fight. However, there are rules such as Pulp Cthulhu that allows for your characters to be more effective against the enemies. Also note that there is actually various optional rules in Call of Cthulhu in this core rulebook where you can modify various situations, making it easier for your characters to succeed, or you can add features to players' characters that help them out. There is also an entire chapters on understanding the 1920s and more. Skip a few pages. You got the appendices, which goes over all the terms in the game, the glossary, as well as gives you more charts for as I said before, conversion, how to adjust things on the fly, and so forth. Tons and tons of charts on weaponry and various items from the 1920s, medical equipment, meals, clothing, men, women, tents, tools, transport, non-U.S. vehicles, U.S. vehicles, air, trains, and so forth, as well as modern day stuff. Tons and tons of weaponry in Call of Cthulhu. Rules on explaining how to use them. My small problem with this book and the player's handbook or the investigator's handbook is that when it gets to the mechanics on shooting a gun and firing multiple rounds in a round, it kind of, that's one of those areas where they didn't do a super good job of explaining it. It kind of got broken up into multiple sections throughout the book. That is a sad part about it. You kind of had to go a little hunting around for how you fire multiple rounds in a turn for your character, but okay, it takes you a while to hunt that down. You got an index in the back, and so forth. You also happen to have maps of Arkham, Massachusetts, Miskatonic County, and many more places, as well as the character sheets, as I said before at the beginning of the book. This book is a must-buy if you're going to but if you're going to run Call of Cthulhu 7th edition. It is a nice buy if you're a player, though. I would definitely say go for it if you're going to be game mastering. You're going to need it. You could use the Player's Handbook if you're going to game master Call of Cthulhu 7th edition, but this is the book you want for 7th edition if you're going to be a game master. If you're a player, you can still own this book, and it still will serve you well as a player, but it's mostly focused towards the game master of the system, not the player. So you're not going to have the full range of options you would have for character creation that's in the Investigator's Handbook. So there you go. You got various advertisements in the back for various ventures, as well as Call of Cthulhu fiction and settings. Thank you very much for watching. I would definitely place this, if you are a game master, as a 4-star book. And as a player, even a 3.75-star book, or a 3.5. The player's book, or the Investigator's Handbook, is the book you really want as a player. But if you're a game master, you can use this as a player's book and a game master's book. So there you go. If you happen to enjoy this video, please consider sharing it around, liking the video, subscribing, and I hope you have a delightful day, a nice night, a wonderful weekend, magnificent month, and see you next time. And then there's also a ribbon, a handy dandy ribbon in the book. Ciao.